best piece of writing advice I've seen for ages came to me this week from a kind of unexpected source. The guys who made this.
This is the last straw! I am going to kill everybody!
Genuinely though, I throw no shade whatsoever at Trey Parker and Matt Stone. They know storytelling. And South Park has way more to offer than just crude jokes. And I think the reason it has such compelling storytelling is because of this one tip that I'm about to show you. Once we've heard it, I'll talk about how I'm going to try and use this in my stories and how you can too. So for context, they're talking about the events or the beats in your story.
We can take these beats, which are basically the beats of your outline, and if the words "and then" belong between those beats, you're f***ed, basically. You got something pretty boring. What should happen between every beat that you've written down is either the word therefore or but, right? So what I'm saying is that you come up with an idea and it's like, okay, this happens, right? And then this happens. No, it should be this happens and therefore this happens. But this happens, therefore this happens.
Like Trey said, it's those two but, because, therefore, that gives you the causation between each beat, and that's a story.
I couldn't believe how simple that was when it was presented that way. If between two beats of your story or two events in your story, you can't say therefore or but because to connect them, instead you have to say and then those events may not link together properly. And that linking, for want of a better word, is the force that drives your story forward. It's the force that makes your plot make sense, and it's the force that causes readers to pick your book back up and carry on reading. So if, like me, many times, you've written a story and it's finished and you read it back over again and you think, something about this just doesn't feel right. It could be because of this. It could be because you've got an and then where you need to have a therefore. I always want my stories to pull the reader along with them, and I want the reader to feel lost in them, and if not, gripped 100% of the time by the story, then at least interested and invested in it. But honestly, I don't think it's always there in my writing. In fact, I know it isn't always there. It's an area that I really would want to improve on, and I think this tip can help. Of course, a book can be worth reading just because of the way it's written. If it's written in a beautiful way all the way through, that can be enough to compel a reader to finish it. Even for us writers who know the tricks of the trade, we're still susceptible to that. We can still just read a book for the pleasure of reading it, not to find out what happens next after this twist or turn. But to me, I would love to have both. I would love for a book I write to be really nicely written, but also have that pull of plot through it. The nice writing stuff, I almost feel okay on a lot of the time. Firstly, because I find that comes more naturally to me than plot does, and also you've got a few chances to correct it in drafts if it's not quite right without making major changes to the story. The other bit though, that pull, that's what I definitely want more of. If I'd have known about this tip, I guess I did know about this tip really, but I'd never put it in such clear language. But if I'd known about it before, then what I would probably do is plot out the novel as I thought up the events of it and make sure that therefore is always there. Make sure there's no and then between them before I've even started writing the entire thing. And if you're in a position right now where you're looking to outline a book or you've just started a book, this is a prime opportunity for you to do the same thing. Really boil down your story to a list of bullet points that are events or decisions or beats or whatever you want to call them, and figure out if there's a therefore between them, connecting them, or if it's an and then, and you're asking a reader to take a chance. It would work for an outline, a plan, a beat list, or even if you're trying to write a synopsis. I'm not finished with my novel yet, I'm still working on it, but I already know I'll probably write another one in the future, and when I do, that's definitely the approach I'm going to take next time. But what about now? What about if you've got a finished novel already and you're looking at it and thinking there might be a few and thens in there? So what happens then? Here's what Trey Parker thinks.
You're
Of course, he's being flippant. It's not all over, your story isn't broken beyond repair. I think you can still apply this retroactively once you've written your story. It's just going to get a little bit more messy. I think in this scenario, it's a case of retracing our steps, going back through our plot and figuring out where we lost the thread that connects it all, discovering where the and thens are hiding amongst the text. That might seem like a lot of editing or a lot of effort to go through when you've already written your book, and it is. But the thing is, no matter how great we believe our story is, we just can't ask readers to take a leap of faith on us. If something doesn't feel right, we can't say to them, you just bear with that bit. I know it feels a bit, but keep going anyway. You just can't do it. We have to appear in control of what we're writing at all times, as though we knew where we were going with it from day one. all the way through writing it. So like I said before, if your story's finished, I think it's a case of going back through it, picking up the thread and following it through until there is no therefore, until there's an and then. And if there is no therefore, we need to do what writers do and write one. I already knew from editing it a couple of times that there was some parts of my novel that just didn't feel quite right. It felt like I was skipping a rung on a ladder or something. So I went back and I tried to use this concept to fix it. So here's what I did. Alright, so I'm taking a look at the book that I've already finished. It's in draft 2, but I've got a feeling I've got a few and thens in the running order of the plot. In fact, I think I've got more than a few. I think I might have a lot of and thens where there should be therefores or but becauses. So I'll show you what I'm doing. This is my project homepage on Campfire, so you can see I've already got 120,000 words. The book's finished. It's too long, but that's another problem I'll have to deal with. Here's all of the plot points, all the different chapters, or whatever you want to call them. They're not really chapters, some of them are just like little add-ins and stuff, but anyway, those are the things that make up the book. I've got like 4 or 5 main characters in this whole thing, so each of them have their own story in the present, and they also, some of them have stories in the past as well, which echo the present, and I move between them. So it's not really that simple as just writing out the story beat by beat for the whole book and then figuring out if there's any and thens. I sort of have to do it character by character, and I almost have to do it character present, character past, but I'll get to that. So what I've done is I've taken my first main character, or the first character that emerges in the book, and I've taken his journey in the present for now, and I've plotted out really easily on just Google Sheets all the different plot points. So these are all like plot points or chapters throughout the book. There's 17 in his journey, if you like. In each of these, what I've essentially done is boiled it down to what is the main thing that happens in each of these steps, and what's important about them, essentially. What's the obstacle that Strauss in this case is up against, or the decision that he's got to make, or the discovery that he's made, or whatever it is. Because then if I'm thinking about this whole concept correctly, which I think I am, there needs to be a therefore or a but because after each of these. So to start with, it's just easier if I can take a look at this in isolation rather than trying to figure it out for the whole book, as I said. So if you're looking to do this with your story that you've already written, or if you're writing a plan or an outline for a new story, this could be a good way to do it. Just bullet point really simply, and then you can look at the relationship between the bullet points. So for each of those, I'm going to now go through and decide. I just read the word decide from the top there. Go through and figure out if I have an and then, or if I have a therefore. There's not enough detail in just this description for me to figure that out, obviously, but I know the book because, I've written it and spent a year doing it. So hopefully that will help me figure out where the and thens are, and then I can fix them. Because I do think this can be something you can fix. I think you can just go in and add details that will make that drive forward continue for the reader, or will make their interest carry over. Because like I said in the main video, I don't want to ever make the reader give me the benefit of the doubt. I don't want them to think, I'm not really sure where this is going, but I'll carry on with it. I want that to be clear all the way through, and that's something I feel like I've never really achieved with a novel before. I've always finished novels and thought, something about this doesn't feel quite right. And it isn't that the sequence of events was wrong, and it's not that what the character didn't make sense, but it just wasn't clear enough in some way. And that was also giving me like a side problem, kind of like when you run with an injury, and then the way you hold yourself to account for that injury causes another injury. So the problem I had is that I would find myself trying to clarify things and over clarify things in the plot, just to so I was like, reader, this bit here is really important, so you need to understand this for sure, definitely, otherwise you might lose something. So nobody likes to see that in books. Nobody likes to see the author's hand reaching out to guide you through it. The author should be invisible, and this over description and over clarification was an issue in some of my old novels, and I think it's because I had and thens, and the logic wasn't necessarily carrying over between the plot points. So hopefully if I do this for each of my characters, I've got to do a past and a present for like 4 or 5 characters at least. So you can see what I mean by there might be quite a few and thens in there. All the stories are probably this long, at least. Some of them might be longer. So I've got like 18 chances, 36 chances per character to have an and then, where really I need a therefore or a but because. And maybe during this whole editing exercise, which is going to take a while, maybe I'll figure out that you don't always need a therefore or a but because. Sometimes the natural way the plot moves or the natural transition between 2 moments or 2 beats will make sense, and it's fine to leave as it is without having to artificially add some kind of strand in there that ties the 2 together. I'm expecting that might happen, but I think as a general rule, you definitely want to try and use this as much as possible. So that's what I'm doing right now. We'll see how it goes. I think it's going to take me a good long while to work through all of those plot points and figure out the therefores or the and thens. And realistically, it's been a couple of days since that last clip, and I'm probably not going to go through every single plot point. But I think instead the better approach, having slept on it a couple of times, is to think about the really important beats of the story, the things that matter the most and have the biggest effect on the overall plot. Those are the things I definitely need to check. But still, I think it'll be a really good exercise in testing the strength of my story. I'd say definitely try this if you're in the early stages of planning a novel or a short story, because I think the principles are the same. It can work in short fiction exactly the same way it can for a novel. And if you've already written your story, I think it's worth having a look over and just asking yourself this question, maybe just in the times where you feel like something's not quite right, if you've got those like I have. I genuinely think this is really good writing advice, and I'm really glad I came across it just at random. If you've ever come across a piece of writing advice that for some reason just immediately spoke to you, let me know what it is, put it down in the comments. I'm going to continue working on my book and trying to apply this where I can over the coming weeks and months as I edit it yet again. But I also want to give it a try on a brand new story at some point, so let me know if you'd like to see me take a shot at that. But as always, I hope this was useful in some way. Thanks so much for watching, and happy writing.